Welcome to the Mosaic Lounge, where diversity meets creativity.
Join us as we celebrate the amazing voices and talents of people in the arts and beyond.
Get ready to meet some exceptional humans who are making waves big and small. We'll talk with them and hear all about their inspiring journeys.
Get inspired by their stories and find out why representation matters in all forms more than ever.
You ready?
I'm ready. The
lounge is open. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mosaic Lounge, where creativity meets diversity. I'm Tori, and I'm joined by my co-host, China. China, how are you doing, girl?
Hey everyone, I'm doing well today. Today is a great day. Refreshed, renewed. How about you? How are you feeling?
I'm doing good. On this episode today, I had a chat with Shelba Waldron. She is such an incredible person. Shelba has so much experience across this activity, not just as a performer, but as an educator, somebody who has done a lot of work behind the scenes, not to mention work as a female judge. So I'm really excited for everybody to hear this episode. China, what was something that you loved us talking about?
Okay, so my favorite part about the interview was hearing about her career, her current career as a athletic, she was an athletic support, advisor between a liaison between the athletics, the parents, and the coaches. And I thought that was just so interesting because we never really hear what goes on inside the community of, being in a sports, sport of the arts. We never hear how difficult it can be. So I thought that was really interesting about her career and, what she does. And I thought that was really inspiring. How about you?
Oh my gosh. Same. I loved hearing about everything that Shelba does outside of the activity and how she brings it inside the activity. One of the best reminders for all educators that you'll get from this episode is question when you're about to say something to a student. Would you say that if their parent was around?
Right.
I also felt like, working in this activity, it's easy to feel bogged down by negative news coming from left and right across a bunch of different things. But talking to Shelba felt really positive and gave a lot of hope that there are better days ahead of us, and we are all an active part of it.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into this episode. I hope people are inspired by this episode, guys. I hope you're inspired. Be inspired.
Hello, Shelba Waldron. Welcome to the Mosaic Lounge. My name is Tori Farias, and we have so much that I want to talk about with you today. I'm going to jump in with a couple of the highlights of your successes that we wanted to make mention of. I know that there's such a laundry list, but you have made an ethics and risk management course for instructors of all modalities across the marching arts. You are the author of Dear Band Director, Your Guide to Understanding Color Guard. You are a color guard judge. You currently do work with USA Gymnastics. You've used your talents in and out of the marching arts and athletics to create not just the performing arts, but any space where there is a dynamic of instructor to student, a safer place. Shelba, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Wow, that makes me sound more important than I thought I was, but okay, thank you.
No, I want to say that I really appreciate a lot of the work that you've done. For our listeners, I was just telling Shelba right before we started that I used to follow her Blogspot account that she used to post to, and there's still some really good nuggets on there. It's on the internet for you to find if you want to look on that. But we wanted to highlight some of those successes in your career, Shelba. Is there anything else that you wanted our audience to know about you before we jump into our conversation?
I've just been in the activity since, I was in high school since my freshman year. I started playing flute in 5th grade and played flute. Actually, people don't realize that I played flute for 11 years, going into college and stuff. I wasn't very great at it. I never made the wind ensemble in high school, which still to this day somehow resonates with me. But, I've just been doing this for a long time. It's never been my career, as some people can make it their career. So I've always run this parallel with my, real job. I don't like to say real job because there are people who do color guard and drum corps stuff, and that is their real job. But my real job is, it used to be working with kids, who had problems, kids who had substance abuse issues, mental health issues. And then over time, I moved out of that and into policy and government type of work. And now I'm at USA Gymnastics And I was there, I got hired there as their director of policy and safe sport policy and education. And as you can probably imagine, that was a little hard. So in the past couple of years, I've moved into their outreach. I'm their director of outreach, and I get to spend all day long talking to coaches and parents and club owners, and oftentimes talking them off of ledges. So I get to hear a lot of stories that's going on in the coaching sporting world of things that happen between parents and coaches or athletes and coaches. And I get to help coaches kind of navigate those situations so they don't escalate into what could become really bad. So that's a little bit more about me. And I have a kid who's also in the activity. He's 16 and just loving his best life doing color guard. So.
Oh, that's incredible. All right. So you sound like a very busy woman.
Yeah.
How do you balance everything in your life between being a mom, doing great work for your own career, but also all this advocacy work?
To be honest with you, I also teach color guard, high school color guard, and an independent program. And I actually got out of it for a long, I lived in Florida, left Florida, and I really didn't teach again for several years because one, I thought I was just done. I felt like I'd been there, done that with the activity, but also I was tired. So I kind of got roped back into it in this last year. And it's been actually really difficult trying to find a balance. I would love to say that, as a 50-something-year-old woman, that I've learned this work-life balance concept. But I am finding that this winter guard season was incredibly difficult. Not because of the kids or the program or anything, but just because, it's difficult. It's just, I don't know if it's my age. I don't know if it is, I have a kid. I don't know, I don't know what the answer is, but so in between and immersed with all that has just been simply like taking naps. I work from home for the most part, and I will literally just give myself permission. I'm like, I'm going to go lay down. And I didn't used to allow myself that type of luxury. And to me, that is I used to think napping was a luxury. I will give myself permission to go to the gym. I will get up from my desk and I'm like, I'm going to the gym for the next 30 minutes. So I've started doing things like that because it's just good for my mental health. But I was finding back in the day when I was, just go with career and guard and teaching paradigm. And, I taught the Alliance of Miami for a couple of years and traveling and all that stuff. I've started to make decisions. I'm not going to travel to judge more than twice or 3 times a year, and I used to just get on planes and just go. And I'm starting to give myself permission to stay local and to tell people no, even the high school guard I teach, I'll tell the director, I'm like, I can't come tonight. I don't do that a lot, but sometimes I'm like, if I can't give my best to the kids, I can't be in front of them. So.
I love that you shared that it is hard to balance it all. And personally, I have lived in a couple of places where I've seen colleagues around me be able to make a career out of it, like you've mentioned. But oftentimes that is the minority. And most people that do teach in this activity have full-time jobs. Potentially have families outside of this, which is another full-time job. I'm a dog mom myself, so I consider that a full-time too. It's really hard. Yeah, it's a lot of work. And there can be a lot of other things that get in your way of teaching. And I think that it's a good reminder that you're not alone. We're not alone in that grind, so to speak. But it is still important to find those times to take care of ourselves. I do wonder, the work that you do in your day-to-day job does sound like it can have a lot of emotional labor to it, with heaviness and days that certain situations happen and information's learned that sits with you. How do you move through carrying heavy emotional loads?
Taking naps. That's a really good question. I might have to kind of ramble through this one because I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I handled it really well at times. But I've worked in the mental health field my entire career. And one of the things that when I really worked in mental health, working with kids, and then I'm working around people who are psychologists and and social workers and whatnot. And we really believed in the concept of taking mental health days and the concept of talking to people. I don't think I grasped when I got into the work of abuse in what we call abuse in sport. I don't think I grasped what was really happening out there when I was reading reports and when I was hearing the stories and whatnot. And it's not all sexual abuse. Like, it's not all like the worst end all be all stuff that's illegal and criminal. Most of it is people who just simply don't know how to coach. And so then that creates this snowball effect. The parents are upset, the kids are upset, nobody knows what to do. You've got this great coach, you don't want to fire them. And it's hard. What to me was hard about it was not the stories, was I would just sit back and go, I can't help this. I don't know what to do. And I would just I don't know how to help anybody. And because it's such a widespread issue. And I think I just learned over time to use my friends the best I can, and to just take myself out to dinner, and have a glass of wine. I also learned actually to stop drinking. I used to love a good cocktail. And I learned over time that that's just simply it's not healthy, first of all, but it doesn't make you any happier. And it really just kind of makes you tired, and it makes you, so I actually really learned to physically take care of myself, going to the gym and going to the doctor, getting my annual, I know this is probably not what you're looking for, but I had to actually learn how to I'm making my annual appointment, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to get my blood test done. I'm going to get my mammogram done, because all of that stress takes its toll on your body. So that's kind of some of the stuff I've been doing for myself over the past decade or so.
Shelba, it's funny that you mentioned I don't know if that's what you're looking for. That's the type of thing that I think somebody like me really needs to hear, because I'm in my 30s. I have been grinding in this activity and other parts of my career for many years now consecutively, even with the pandemic as a break. I kind of made the mistake of jumping back in head first, and then within a year experienced very detrimental burnout that I'm still navigating through, and I'm still working past. So those things like going to the doctor, just remembering to do the basic needs and cover everything is super important. And I know for people like me can often feel like a luxury, but it's a great reminder of, if you take care of these things, then it's not in the back of your head. And then you can go into your day with a clearer head. And I think that is really important, because it makes all the difference, just being able to walk through life a little bit more grounded, with a little bit more assurance that all these other things are okay. So we can be okay too. So I love that you shared that. It's a perfect answer. I specifically want to start talking about the work that you do and how it translates to our activity. I have a little bit of experience teaching drum corps, independent groups between winter guards, percussions, obviously marching band, all the color guard things. And so I know that from being around my own colleagues in different areas of this activity, when it comes to, I saw something that could be taken a certain way, let me talk about it, let me report it. Oftentimes, there are systems in place that seemingly work against the intent of the instructor that's trying to make a report, even if it's just bringing up a concern. I've commonly been told by people that I work with that, I mentioned something that I saw that was a little bit suspect, and that was it, end of the line. It didn't go any further than that. But I know that they didn't address it with this instructor. I'm not sure how the student feels. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for me to go talk to them. I know I'm speaking very vaguely here because I don't want to get too specific. But I think as a general blanket statement, what are some ways that, for those of us that are teaching in this activity in all facets of it, what are some ways that we can be advocates for our student? I think especially when we feel that there is something in our way, which might even be people in the organization itself.
Right. So there's an inherent problem in reporting. And I'm going to kind of take this out of the activity because it's not the activity, it's kind of across the board. If you have a job and your job is to coach I'm just going to use gymnastics. Your job is to coach a gymnastics club, and you see a coach who is emotionally abusive. That coach is the head coach. Reporting is, I don't care who you are, is not easy because you're taking a risk to put your job at risk. And a lot of people are not in a position to go, well, I'm just going to leave that job because that guy was unethical. And we all like to say that on paper, like I would have done this. I've noticed in my years, especially in my outreach position, there's a lot of fear. Like coaches will call me or club, they're like, I don't know what to do. And the good thing about being in the Olympic movement is we have the Center for Safe Sport. We have every national governing body has to have a reporting mechanism, and they have to have a mechanism that's free from retaliation. And even in our system, you have people who are like, if I make this report, then they will know I'm the person that made the report because I'm the only person in the gym who could have made the report. I was the only person who saw it. And like I said earlier, most stuff is not illegal. Like, it's not like most of the stuff you see, you're going to call, law enforcement. Because to me, that's easy to do. Like, if I saw something illegal, yeah, let me call law enforcement because I'm not going to let that happen. Most stuff is not, it sits in this gray zone. And that's what makes it hard for people. They're like, first of all, they question, is this even wrong? Or was this just a one-time thing? Or maybe I'm misreading it. That's part of it, is knowing kind of what you're really seeing. And then unfortunately, in a lot of, especially in the independent color guard programs, they're usually run by one or two people. And they don't have, drum corps have boards of directors. They have DCI, and DCI has a pretty robust reporting process. And they have, I work at Spirit of Atlanta. I'm their safety director, and we have an online portal, and any report comes to me, and to a couple other people, but it doesn't go to the other staff members. Nobody on the board sees it. Nope, the executive director doesn't even see it, or the core director doesn't even see it. So it is a safe process, and then I've got the experience to sit and look at that report and go, oh, okay, we need to act right now. And, some reports are like, oh, we can wait. Sometimes it's they made us do 10 push-ups. I'm making that up. That never happened. But, you will get kind of these reports okay, 10 push-ups. Okay. I'm not going to get out of bed right now. We're not talking about sexual abuse here. But I have that experience to look at the reports. And I also have a really good team. And so we all look at that report and we'll go, I might read it one way and you might read it another way. And that guy might read it another way. And so the three of us or four of us will kind of get on a call and we'll discuss it and we'll figure out the next steps. Unfortunately, in a lot of independent color guard programs or high school programs even, they don't have that. And I don't know if so to answer your question, how do you do it? I think I don't know. I think in programs where you're just dealing with one or two or three people, I think you can just go up to them and say, hey, am I reading you right? Am I reading the situation right? Can we look at how that comment or that situation has impacted the kids or the performers or, whatever. And I think you can handle it in those terms. A lot of times you will get fired. A lot of time, if you're not working with them, if someone's not ethical to begin with, they're not ethical to begin with. So it's just difficult. And I think I wanted to send this message that anybody who is facing those type of situations, that it's okay to question yourself and it's okay to wonder what to do next. And it's okay to pull in outside people and have like, what do you think I should do? Because if I'm teaching an independent program and there's only there's the director and then there's 3 other staff people and me, and it's the director that's the problem, then it's an uphill battle at that. And how do you do it? You bring in your staff, you have the discussion. Can we sit this guy down or this woman down, whatever, and move on from there. If it is at any level criminal, I just think from a human standpoint, an ethical standpoint, you have to make the call. I've made the call before, and you have to make the call if it's criminal in nature. But most of the stuff that we see in the Olympic movement and in the color guard and all that stuff, it's not criminal in nature. It's unethical and it can be abusive. But to be honest with you, there's no law that says you can't scream at kids. There's not. There's no law that says you can't cuss kids out when you're teaching an independent program. It's unethical, it's wrong. And sometimes I've known staff people who've walked out. They're like, I can't fix it, so I'm leaving. And then that's their way of dealing with it. And I don't know. Am I rambling?
No, it's fantastic. I think that there's a lot of really good and juicy nuggets in what you're saying too, because it is a lot. It's not always as black and white as like that person's doing something illegal, let's call the cops. Yeah. It doesn't look like that all the time. And I think that as instructors, most people want to feel like they are making the best choice for the students and that they are making a choice that's going to be of a greater benefit. But that fear is real. I mean, I know for myself, I have been that person that has left an organization. I'll say it. I've left multiple organizations because some type of practice in how other instructors were conducting themselves did not make me comfortable to be around. And even to a point where I'd say, if I wouldn't recommend my own students come be a part of this organization, then why am I standing as the face of it? And things like that just wouldn't sit well with me. So I would make the choice to say, okay, well, I would just not align myself with this organization anymore. But again, speaking for myself, that becomes very difficult because I've left organizations before and then felt an overwhelming amount of guilt of, oh my goodness, did I throw in the towel? Was I the person that was supposed to be fighting the good fight, so to speak? I know how much I was trying to add for these students behind the scenes, and whatever that was met with, typically some resistance. I just emotionally couldn't do it anymore, and I think that guilt has sat with me over long periods of time. But I know that something that I've reminded myself as well as fellow colleagues that have been in similar situations is we do have to take care of ourselves. It goes back to that self-care thing. When you're having to front emotional labor, you do have to take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people, and you can't pour from an empty cup. And that's just what that is. And I do think that some of those situations that I did walk away from, they did get handled after I left. So that's always a positive thing as well. So there was some good outcomes there too.
And I'm not going to say the name, and I don't talk about this guard very much, but I taught a guard for 2 years. The director was nuts, but I believe, she was racist. And it was at a time before the Black Lives Movement, before we had the dialogue we're having now. And it's amazing when I look back, and I quit. The first year I didn't see it. The second year I had a great staff, or it wasn't my staff, but I worked with a great staff. And we didn't see it until well into the season, like the beginning of the season. And then you were like, I don't know what to do. Now I know what to do. We're like 12, 13 years from it. And we've had a much greater dialogue than we ever did at that point in time. And she would say things where you're sitting in the stands and you're like, did she say that? That's not what she meant. And you question yourself. You're like, well, I would never, that's not what she meant. And, like one time we had a kid in the guard who was had a Muslim background, and he would need to pray at certain times on the weekend. And then she would say things every once in a while like, "Are you done praying? Can you join rehearsal now?" And it's like, it's not so overt and obvious, but you're like, what? Now that we've, like I've had, and it's part of my job and a part of the Olympic movement, I've had tons and tons and tons and tons now of training on microaggressions and what they mean and things like that. But I'd never even heard the word in 2012. Like, we were barely talking about diversity, and we were barely talking about all that type of stuff then. We're in the Obama era, and of course there's no racism. We have a black president. I had no, but she would say things like that. I'm like, and finally it just all hit ahead. And the staff had gotten together. I don't know, at one point we're like, are we all hearing the same thing? Like, are we all like picking up on this? Because you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be surprised. I was surprised how subtle things can be, and now I'm not. Like nowadays, I'm just so in tune to, I feel like everything, but then, and I don't know, it was probably mid-March or so, I just quit. I said, I can't do this. Then I got roped back in to get them into Dayton, because we're like, we're going to all do this as a team. Like there was 4 of us on staff. We're like, we're going to suck this up and deal, and looking back, I would do anything. I would do anything to go back and be able to fix that situation. And the way I would go back and fix it is I would confront this person in front of the guard immediately. But I wasn't that strong then. I mean, you think you're strong, but I also wasn't as educated as I am. And I don't think any of us were. I don't think it was just a different time. We've learned a little bit, I think, in the past 5 or 6 years. So, how do you handle it? I think the best you can. I think if you can't and there's no one you can go to and you've done your best, you have to walk away. Unfortunately for the kids, I have reached out to those kids. And I'm like, we should have done better. We should have done better. We should have stood up. And, and most of them are really appreciative that we just stuck around. We're like, the guard folded the next year because when you don't have kids that come back. But, yeah. So to answer your original question, I don't know if there's the best way that you should handle things, as much as I think you should assess the situation the best you can. Talk to your peers, talk to your other staff members, and see what the best situation is at the time. And that just simply that's probably not the answer that people want. People want, you're supposed to stand up in the middle of the gym and say, don't ever do this again. But it doesn't really work that way.
So we have a couple minutes. I do want to be able to share some quick sound healing in this space, just so you can see and feel and just be in your space of nourishment, of love, of peace, of love and of peace. So remember that blanket that I told y'all about? We're gonna go ahead and get that blanket out and be on the blanket. This is one of my instruments, y'all. I use that. So what I want you to do is just to close your eyes for the next couple minutes as we round out our time together. Again, I'm Andrea. You're going to have this contact information later on, but just as you settle in, just be at peace with yourself.
Yeah, and then it's, like you mentioned, it's not as overt all the time. Most people aren't overtly racist or sexist or fatphobic or homophobic in these spaces. It typically is those microaggressions that will just be little one-off comments here and there. And those are the things that I think are important for us to pay attention to and just clock and then be curious. And I like what you said about confronting and, hey, what did you mean when you said this?
Yeah.
Hey, can you clarify your intention here? And I mean, I'm never afraid to be that person that's like, what I heard was this. And if you didn't mean that, would you mind clarifying to this student? And that is hard. I am not inherently a confrontational person. So for me, that's something that I have had to look at myself in the mirror, practice saying it, practice being that advocate and that ally, because chances are that student's not going to do it. And as hard and as scary as it is for me in an instructor position, it's way harder and scarier for that student to say something, especially in cases of this activity where they are paying a lot of money to be a part of this experience. But yet still, depending on the group that they're in, may have a role that is in flux. I know that there's still organizations out there that will say, hey, like your spot is replaceable for XYZ reasons. And I know that can instill fear in students to speak up about anything for any reason. Even like, I actually didn't know that was count 8. Like, hey, it's not that serious. It's okay. But that can still instill fear in people. One thing that I wanted to bring this conversation to is we are in 2024 now. You mentioned that in the past couple of years, especially, we've been able to gather more knowledge and more language to be able to clock certain things and inquire and notice. As instructors in this space, what is a way that we should adapt or change our teaching to match the needs of the students in the present day? And I know that that's a very broad question, so whatever sort of speaks to you in that.
What's the phrase? Hang on. There is, in the Olympic movement, and it's just now, when I say the Olympic movement is not that much further ahead than the activity. We just have more resources. But athlete-centric is the phrase that's being thrown around a lot. And what does it mean to be athlete-centric? People think athlete-centric means that the athlete has the sole voice, that they are allowed to do whatever they want, that they can come to practice and tell the coach what they're going to do. Well, that's not what athlete-centric means. It just simply means that as a coach, I am taking the individual as an individual, that I am seeing that they could be neurodivergent, that they could have some sort of mental health issue, that they could have, that I am trauma informed, that I could run a rehearsal knowing that, there's probably, just based off statistics alone, if I'm running a guard with 30 people, there's a possibility that 5 or 6 kids in that guard, have had some level of trauma, whether it's abuse in the home, whether it's they saw mom and dad, domestic violence between mom and dad, whether they've gone through poverty, and that's trauma, whether they've been in a car accident, not everything is abuse. And you run rehearsal in a way that takes that trauma, that concept that you have kids that could have trauma and that you're not going to trigger them. Everyone thinks trigger is a word that is a dirty word, because we've thrown trigger around like, I'm on college campus and I saw a bird that I don't like, I'm triggered. We always joke like things like that. Well, that's not really what it means, and we have kind of bastardized the concept, but triggering is for people who have been traumatized. And you can run a rehearsal in a way that does not trigger, meaning you watch your tone of voice. Before we got on the call, I said one of the things I want to talk about is like how I was, or how we all were at one point and how we are now. I used to raise my voice all the time, especially in the world class, when I was teaching world class, because that's how I was taught. I used to run rehearsals like if rehearsal went from 9 to 5, let's say we started at 9, we were ending at 5. Like we weren't starting at 9:01 and ending at 4:58, and it was so structured. It was so strict. I can't recall me ever cussing because I was still a professional in my real world. So I always had to watch what I was saying anyway, because I couldn't afford it to hurt my career. But, it was, my rehearsals were always like this: do it again, do it again, do it again. And I just didn't ever ask, how are you guys feeling? Like to me, it was a job. It was like, I got to get that flag feature clean. We're going to Dayton in 3 weeks and blah, 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 And now to be trauma informed means that you don't have to beat them up. It's like, yes, you have to work them hard. If you're going to nationals, you're an athlete. You're expected to do certain things. But will the world come to an end if we start at 9:01? Absolutely not. Is it okay that we can have a conversation in the first 5 minutes about how was your day? Just simply going around saying, hey, how was your, especially with high school kids, how was your day at school? And they're going to tell you things like, oh, it was fine, or I had a math test and I blew that math test. It doesn't matter what they say. You're giving them that 5 minutes to kind of show that they're human and you're human. At the end of rehearsal, checking in, how are you doing? Like, how was tonight? How did you guys feel about running that section? Do you need to run that section again? Or saying, hey, we ran that section a lot tonight, I know, but it didn't really get to where I wanted. We're going to have to do it again tomorrow. And I'm going to try to take a different approach with you guys. Okay. Could you give me some input as we're going along? Is this working? I don't find this joy and arrogance anymore. And to me, when I look back on some of the stuff, the way I taught, I find it very arrogant. Like, I'm not going to ask you your opinion as a performer. Why should I ask you? I'm the one running rehearsal. I'm the one that sees the floor. I'm the one that sees the dirt. I'm the one that sees the problem. You don't see the problem. Now, like years later, I just want to go back to those rehearsals and go, wow. Wow. So to be athlete centric as a coach means that I still cared about the kids, but it means that you show them that you care through dialogue, through the 5 minutes. Is it really going to kill you to spend 5 minutes at the beginning and end of practice to ask how they're doing, to check in? Is it really going to kill you to go up to a kid on the floor who's crying and say, go take a minute? I didn't, crying used to just get under my skin like you wouldn't believe. And I was just be like, it was like blood in the water to me. Like I was a shark. And and now I'm like, oh my Lord, what was I like? How horrible is that? Now now I see it even before they start crying. I'm like, I'll go up to them. I'm like, go to the bathroom, go take a minute, and I don't shame them for taking that minute. Now, maybe if they were gone for 30 minutes, I'd be like, we need to think through this a little bit. But usually kids will trust you. Like they are trustworthy. If you say, go pull yourself together, do what you've got to do, they will spend maybe 5 minutes. But then most of them will be back out on the floor. So you've got to show them that they can be trusted and to take care of their mental health. And I also know a lot more about mental health than I used to. We as adults, as a society, know more. We didn't know a lot about mental health then. We thought the way to teach kids in sports and competitive environments was to just do it again. Do it again, do it again, do it again. Nike even had the phrase, no pain, no gain. So you were hurt, you better have a bone sticking out or you're going to get back on the floor. Well, we know better now. You can be hurt. You can have tendon problems. You can have, tendonitis type of issues that are really debilitating, and they need to ice and they need to rest. And that rest for an hour from using their body is actually going to help the guard out in the long run, or the core out in the long run, because then they will be able to get back out on the field and really go full force once they get back out. But if they keep going and going and going without any breaks, then eventually their body and their mind will break down and you will lose them on the back end. So I've learned all of that. And that's how you become athlete centric, is you actually start believing that they are human beings, not some cog in a machine that you have to clean to get ready for Dayton.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Shelba. So many things I want to affirm in that, but what is really sticking out to me is when we put the athlete, the performer first, that is not giving them the reins to run rehearsal, but that's saying we're working together. Right. The staff and the students, we're a team. So let's meet each other where we're at today. And that push and pull can sit in a different pocket and a different range every rehearsal. But it's saying, well, we have the same shared goals of cleaning this chunk. Okay, great. This is my plan to clean the chunk. Where do we land with that? Or what else do we need to make this shared goal happen? And even from the student's perspective, like, nobody wants to sit around all day doing the same 8 counts for a whole block. And we've all had those times where that's happened. So certainly not uncommon, but I love this question of, is there a better way? Is there a more efficient way? Is there an effective way that at the end of the day is saving everybody time, is saving us from potentially running into injuries from overuse, feeling emotional as a student because it's like, well, I can't do this any better than what I'm doing, but we keep doing the same thing and I keep doing it wrong and I'm just not there yet. And I think that solves a lot of those problems potentially. I think my question is, I know that there are instructors that still exist out there, and it's totally fine that this still exists, but a lot of people who are learning how to adapt and change some of their language and some methodologies with teaching. What would you say to the instructor that is fearful of saying the wrong thing, or, I have to walk on eggshells when I instruct my kids today? What would you say to that instructor with just adapting and being more present with our current times?
First of all, I don't think anyone should be walking on eggshells. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells when you're teaching kids, chances are you shouldn't be teaching those kids. There's probably something in there that you don't believe in, that you're being forced, you feel like you're being forced into something, like the square peg into round hole type of concept. You have to believe, like, I'll give you an example. When I teach the pronouns, I try really hard with the pronouns, but I screw up. I was teaching this independent guard. It was a good friend of mine. And I told, we planned this months ago that I would go in and help them. And I said, I was just honest with him. I said, I don't know any of you. It was great. Let me tell you, they had names on their t-shirts. They had t-shirts made with their names on them. And I was literally able to go, Tori, okay, go, and so, but I told him, I said, I am human and I'm trying. And it's amazing how people will go, cool, and I said, I am trying to do my best at being, is it pronoun neutral? Is that the phrase we're using now? And I said, but I will screw up and please forgive me. And it's amazing how but I believe we should be working on being pronoun neutral. But so you have to give yourself grace. But you also have to believe in what you're trying to give yourself grace in. Because if you're trying to force it, then it's going to look like you're forced. And then you're going to feel like you're walking on eggshells. I don't feel like with kids I'm walking on eggshells. For one, I would never say anything that would get me into trouble. And I would never do something I just can't imagine, and if I also am a person that I've learned through just the job I do, that I would never do things that would jeopardize my career. Like I would never be alone with kids. I would never text, I would never text a performer, outside of the norm, like outside of the group, or, I would never be private with them. I would never say something in a rehearsal that I wouldn't want someone saying to my own kid. We have a rule I teach a course on boundaries, like how to keep professional boundaries, and for the gymnastics world. And one of the things we say is, we call it the parent rule. And we say, if you wouldn't want it being said in front of the parent, then why would you say it in front of the kid? So I would never say something I wouldn't want the parents to hear. And I have an open door policy, so to speak, where if they want to tell me something, they can tell me something. Nothing is shocking to me anymore. There is nothing a performer out there is going to say to me that I'm going to go, oh my gosh, I've never heard that information before. And so if you're walking on eggshells, it means that you have something to be fearful of. And I don't personally, for me, I don't have anything to be fearful of. And I think you have to believe in the kids. You have to believe in this new world, whatever that is to people. I've taught with a person fairly recently who literally said in front of the kids, it's not my job to care about your pronouns. And I'm like in the back and I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm just like, okay. I'm just like, come on, but I thought at the time, well, at least he's honest. Yeah. At least we now know where you are, but I believe the people who are walking on eggshells, they simply are afraid of what's coming out of their mouth, and they need probably more training in something, and whatever it is they're afraid of. If it is like, I just read a Facebook post of someone who's my age, maybe a little bit older, and he's like, I don't understand kids today. And I'm like, kids haven't changed. They're smarter than we were. They're not going to put up with a bunch of crap. When I marched drum corps, I loved it. I would do it again in a minute. I loved it. But my God, like it bordered on emotional abuse. If it wasn't emotional abuse, I would still go through that emotional abuse because it was an amazing experience. But you cannot teach that way anymore. You cannot teach in a way that is so mentally draining that the kids are completely and utterly beat up inside. And, the difference between now and then is then we didn't know we were being beat up. We didn't understand what it meant to be beat up inside. We didn't understand. Nobody was talking to us about our mental health. We didn't even know we had mental health. We didn't know what that meant. We didn't know that when we didn't get water for 3 hours in the hot sun, that was bad. We didn't know. We just thought we were just guilty of we didn't do this right, so we're not getting water, so we'll just do it better so we can get water so I can go to the bathroom. Kids know better now. They know that they deserve, that they have the right to water, the right to bathrooms, the right to respect of who they are, things like that. And I just think you have to approach it that way. And if you don't, then you are dated and you probably need to move on.
I feel like that's your mic drop moment. I love everything that you said. I'll speak from personal experience too. Outside of the work that I do in the activity, I work in the fitness industry, and I've been teaching group fitness classes since 2016. And in a similar trajectory, there has been a shift in that industry as well, with the language that we use in our classes being more body neutral, but also the use of less gendered language, just so that the class experience is specific to the person taking it. And the instructor nowadays is trying to project less onto the person taking the class. And I often try to take those trainings into the work that I do in this activity because there's just such a huge overlap in that. And I think that it is human, and it is also humble to say, hey, I'm still doing the work and I'm still learning too. And I might make a mistake. Help me through that. Yeah. If I'm working with an intimate color guard, I might have the time to go around the circle, learn everyone's pronouns. If I'm working with a big marching band and I only have 2 hours or an hour and a half in their class period to work with them, I might say, hey, please correct me if I do mess up your pronouns. And it's of the best intentions. And I think the intention is the most important part of it. It's very different than saying, well, I just don't care. Right. Or it's not my problem or my job to know. It very much is part of our job descriptions to know the students that we're teaching. And part of knowing somebody's name is knowing their pronouns too, to know how to refer to that person. So that's so important. Oh my gosh, Shelba, I could literally talk to you forever. I have just a couple quick questions to go through. This is all such good and juicy stuff. I'm excited to listen back to this episode myself and take some notes for myself. I wanted to shift into talking a little bit about your experience as a color guard judge. I think at this point in time, it would be untrue for me to sit here and pretend like there's no female judges. But when I do look at panels of judges, female judges do still take up the smaller percentage in the ratio. But I do know of plenty of folks, women, non-binary folks, who do want to break into judging. What advice would you give to any folks who want to start working into that part of the activity?
You just have to start. Unfortunately, it depends on where you are in the country. So I can only speak to my zones that I'm in, because each part of the country, it's not like, so in gymnastics, for example, there is a path, and everyone in the country follows this path. And you have to take tests every couple years. You have to get certified for levels. There's 10 levels, and you have to get certified for those levels. And then once you get certified and all that stuff, then you can get put on panels in your local area. And then, then you can go regional and national and whatnot. It doesn't work that way in our world. And so, like, if some color guard circuits, they do have training paths. Other circuits are like, hey, Tori, do you want to judge? And you're sitting behind a recorder going, okay, that looks good, I think. So I think you have to first reach out to your local area and kind of, the problem with the male and female thing, I don't believe, now I'm sure there are, so I'm not naive enough to think that we are not misogynistic in nature, but I don't believe, at least the people I know, are sitting around going, I don't want any women on the panel. What happens in color guard or in marching band judging and guard judging is you have a chief judge, and that chief judge has a Rolodex, so to speak, and they tend to go back to that Rolodex every year. So, like, I judge in the same places roughly every year because those same people reach out to me. Well, if you don't have a broader plan, a broader Rolodex, if you don't have a way nationally to find other people or who are women or are non-binary or a person of color or something like that, then they don't have, it's all about the connections. So it's up to us who've been in it for a while to reach out to women who say, or whoever who says, I want to judge, who kind of like go, well, let me introduce you to this person. But if they really want to judge, they really need to reach out to their local color guard circuit. And there's a lot of big guard circuits. Like Florida has the FFCC, and you have South Florida. In Indiana, we have the Indiana. ICGC 8, whatever. It's like a ton of initials. And you find who the chief judge is, and you're like, hey, I'd like to judge, or I'd like to trial. Most people will let you trial, but you have to start somewhere. But what the problem is most people don't even know who to reach out to. And I think we as an activity have to fix that ultimate problem. Because if you have no connections, then you don't even know who you're supposed to call. But I also see a lot of fear. People are like, I could never. You can. You'd be surprised how much knowledge you have. You'd be surprised how we need your voice in front of those kids. How many people who have been judging for so long have not been in front of kids for the past 20 years. They've not taught a guard or a drum corps, and they are working off of dated information. They are working off of dated concepts. And it's important we get new people in. And so if I had advice, I would say try to find someone who is a judge to see if they can introduce you to people. The best places to start judging is some local early season marching band contest. Like usually that has like 9 bands, 8 bands, and it's a good place to kind of like, let me see what I see. And like I judged in somewhere last year, I don't remember now, and I had this young woman sitting next to me. She wasn't shadowing me, but I don't know why she was sitting next to me actually. And throughout the whole show, she was like trialing judging. And she was sitting next to me and she'd say, and I would just turn to her and I'd say, what do you think about them? And she's like, well, I would have given them this score and I thought they did this and this. And I literally, I was like, well, I think, that's great information, but you missed this and this and this. And, I think that helps also is if older people like me can be the mentors that we need to be.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I find that across the activity, there does seem to be this commonality in the connections that we have being a barrier for entry. And I think anyone who's listening or watching that wants to step into the judging world, do that little bit of work to reach out and know that we want to hear your voices out there too. I think that's really good and important advice just to get started. And there are plenty of people that I am sure would love to help mentor and bring other people up.
Yeah.
All right, Shelba, I so appreciated your time. I have one closing question for you. Up until this point in this activity, you've seen a lot of change and a lot of growth and this trajectory of where we might be going next. What do you hope to see in the future of not just this activity, but the arts and athletics from a performance aspect, from an instruction aspect? What do you hope to see in our future?
Well, I would like to start seeing big time sponsorships. But that's probably not what you're going for right now. I actually like the fact that WGI and I believe DCI too. I don't really keep up with what's happening anymore at the high national level, but they're bringing young people's voices into the equation. Like WGI has the emerging voices.
Mm-hmm.
It's WGI that does that. And it's young people, I think between like the ages of 18, 21-ish. And they're actually sitting on like their own little like committee. And they're actually saying, this is what we would like to see. And it's kind of like the concept of if you don't vote, then you don't get a say. Well, we've never given them the opportunity. When I was their age, when I was 21, nobody would have ever asked me what I thought about WGI. Nobody would have said, hey, Shelba, you just age out of pride. What do you need from us? Nobody asked me that. And I think it's good that they are being given that voice. And I think that we need to even develop that even further. In the Olympic movement, every national governing body has to have what's called an athletes council. And then there's rules to it. Like there's tons of rules to it, like who can sit on it and whatnot. Like, but it has to be like, current or former Olympians who are within like 10 years of their last competitive event. I could be a little bit wrong on that, but you have to be fairly young and you have to be fairly recent as being an athlete. And there's other criteria. And I believe we need an athletes council or a performers council. And they are more than just an advisory board. They will tell like us, and they're like, this is what we're seeing. And we would like you to affect some change, and then we look at it from an educational standpoint, from a rules, maybe. I don't sit on the rules side of things, but a rules Congress, whatnot. And so I think that's important. And I think we're starting to see that. We have to change how we recruit for boards of directors, for choreographers, for directors, on how we give. And I'm seeing drum corps be better at it. When I spent a lot of time up until fairly recently in my life, with a low self-esteem when it comes to the activity. I felt like women, like me as a woman, could not choreograph because I never saw women choreographing. So I became a tech, and I think I'm a good tech. I think I'm a great tech. But I still could dance. There was one point I could dance. And I believe that, I don't think I outwardly thought it, but I definitely, when people would ask me to choreograph something, I'd be like, oh no, that person's so much better at it. I think the way we talk to young women and persons of color and I don't know, whoever else, I think we have to give them the opportunity. We have to show them you can do this, and I expect you to do this. And here we go. Let's step up to the plate. I would like to see that, and we're seeing it more. We're starting to see more women designers. I didn't trust myself as a designer. That's why I don't design now. I would have a design idea and I would question. I would here I am in a design meeting with men who respected me. Like nothing was like, I was not being shut down. I just was shutting down myself. And I would say things like, I have an idea. You guys might not like it, but I just kind of want to throw it out there. Just like, I look back now and I'm like, no, that was a damn good idea. Like there are some things I see on like guards I taught that my ideas did make it to the floor, like my design, my music ideas and whatnot. And I questioned it all the way. And I look at it now and I'm like, that really was a good idea. I wish I had become who I am now 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I would like the people who don't feel like they have a voice to stop feeling like they have a voice. And I would like us to give those people an opportunity to speak up, so they don't do the, well, I don't know, maybe like I used to do and stuff like that. And I've talked to other women my age, and we were all like, it's just how we were brought up in the activity. We were taught by men, male designers, male choreographers, male technicians, male directors, and when you don't see yourself in those people, then your voice automatically gets shut down because you're shutting it down. And to answer the question, I would like to make sure in this activity we are not shutting the voices down. We've got to have representation.
I love that answer. And you're speaking to something that I myself relate to. And I will say I was very lucky to be sort of raised in this activity around some very strong female leadership voices, many of whom I still hear in my head when I teach. And it is still true that while I was lucky to have these super strong women in front of me instructing, oftentimes it is more commonly the men that are the choreographers, the designers. It took myself a long time to also believe that I could. About 3-4 years ago-ish, I started my own journey trying to do work as a designer and choreographer, and that self-esteem, that imposter syndrome or lack of my self-esteem is what kept holding me back, even when I was already in the room.
Yeah, I
would be in these meetings and still have that voice that's like, oh, don't say that, or like, that's not a good idea, who says? And I think the more that we can create spaces that are creative, that are open to any ideas, all ideas in the room, there's no bad ideas, then we can get more voices present. I've worked with people before that have what they call a honeypot, where there's no bad ideas, but that idea might not be good for this moment, but we can hold on to it. Yeah. We can keep it in a Google Doc and come back to it later if we need to. And it's true. I think that this is an art form at its core. It's very subjective, and sometimes you go with the idea that is just a little bit more functional for whatever reason, or reads a little bit better on the floor or the field, or it's just a little bit more achievable for the kids. And it's nothing personal against whoever the idea may have gotten pushed to the wayside. And with designing and choreographing, I think that it's still a world that is newer for me too. I'm just starting to pave my way in a career within that, but it's something that I'm trying to bring people up with me, because that is also a responsibility, as I am sort of following in the footsteps of some of the women before me who very much paved this pathway to make this possible. I also have to bring up friends with me, and I, first of all, I don't want to do it alone, but also there's enough room for everybody, and that is the way to help propel this activity forward, and all work together in that sense. So I really love that you said that, Shelba. This has been an amazing conversation. I could literally talk to you for hours.
I was just thinking that too.
It is really so many good nuggets, and like I said, I myself will go back to this episode and jot some stuff down in my notebook. And I hope that others listening will do the same. I think a really big takeaway that I want to highlight to fellow instructors out there is, if you wouldn't say it in front of their parents, you probably shouldn't be saying it. I think that that is such wise words that we can all have in the back of our heads. And that only gives us more access to speak from our hearts and with our passion forward when we're giving information to these kids, because it's coming from a pure place with the right intentions. Thank you so much. Again, I just won't stop raving enough about this for weeks on end.
Well, I appreciate it. Can I add one quick thing?
Oh, absolutely.
I know you're wrapping up. I wanted to leave with this thought when we were talking about representation and having the voice in the room and all that stuff. When we teach kids, it's important that we show them that their voice matters. Then they will grow up in the activity or in their jobs or their marriages or, whatever, and know that their voice matters. It's a lesson that it took me a long time to understand and learn. And whatever we do in front of them, they learn to accept as the truth. So you are mean and aggressive, then they learn to accept that it's okay for people to be mean and aggressive to them. We shut their voices down, then they go into a room at work and they're like, well, I have an idea, but, every performer, male or female, that comes up to me and they say, hey, can I ask you a question? I'm like, absolutely, ask away. They're like, well, I have a suggestion. Can we do this? Absolutely. And I will try it. Now, sometimes I'm like, I'm going to try it anyway and try to help them understand why their choreographic idea is not going to work in the show. But I still let them try it because we need to teach them that it's okay to have an idea. It's okay for that idea to not work. And then that they're not stupid because they had that idea. So I wanted to really end with that because it's the way we talk to them is crucial.
That is a perfect final note to add. There's so many other things that I wanted to talk to you about, but a point that I did have on my notes to bring up was there's not a lot of resources for being a color guard instructor specifically for any type of arts instruction. I mean, color guard specifically, we can't go and get a college degree to learn how to do. Even sometimes you walk into rehearsals and you're like, oh, I've never heard that toss being called that before. I currently live in the Pacific Northwest, but I'm originally from South Florida, and I've kind of traveled across the country and have been in a few different circuits. And for the first time in my life, I heard a toss called a swing lift, and any Pacific Northwest person will know exactly what I'm talking about. But I was like, oh, that's just a standard double on flag.
Oh, okay. I was
called
like,
a swing lift.
So.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, interesting. Well, learning something new. So there's no uniform language even. I know that there's always a time of year where the pull hit versus pole hit debate comes up, or pole flip. And everybody has their isms for it. But because we don't have that education or those resources outside to say this is the way, we have the responsibility of sort of teaching each other and showing each other the way. And I love the idea of not knocking down a suggestion that a student says, because it's so easy to say, no, we're not going to do that, we're going to do my thing because this is what I had planned for you, or no, this is what we're going to do, and not explain why. I love the idea of, let's just try it. And if it doesn't work, hey, this is why that's not coming off that way. Or, going back to the honey pot, that would be a great toss for another moment. But this particular moment, there's this note in the music that I'm hearing that I want to amplify. So that is a perfect note to end on. Truly so amazing. Shelba, we will have to do this again.
Oh,
thank you so much. Yeah, all day. We'll have to do a part 2, maybe 3, 4, 5, who knows. But thank you once again for joining us here at the Mosaic Lounge. This is Tori signing off. Thank you for all of our listeners.
Thanks.
You have a good day.
Thanks tons.
Check out more at Melanin Mosaic PE on Instagram and YouTube, or head to our website, melaninmosaicpe.com. You can find me at Tori.Farias on Instagram and TikTok.
And you can find me at _ChinaJ on Instagram and Chai J Mills on TikTok.
Closing the lounge for the night. See y'all next time.
See ya.